That's the Incarnation at work. That's being Christ in the midst. It's the same way when I had my first problem with my heart and I was taken to this emergency room and then a couple of days later I'm there for a cardioversion. And I walk into the clinic office and there's all these old people sitting there looking really, really down. And I walked in and I said, "Isn't it wonderful being upright?" And they thought about it for a minute, and everybody laughed and had a smile on their face. And it is true. But this is really a broken world that we live in. And the way we impact the world as Christians is by recognizing that this world is it has been created by God, and everyone that we meet is either an Orthodox Christian or a potential Orthodox Christian. And regardless, everyone that we meet is our brother and our sister. So we should be happy to see them. Absolutely filled with joy to see them. And they should know it. They should sense that we are happy to see them. I remember one year there was an elderly couple that had been married 65 years. And I got a call from dispatch around 2:30 in the morning. And so I drove to this house that was on a remote beach of Vashon. And I had no idea the road was even there, and it was my GPS that took me there. And when I arrived, some sheriff's deputies were still there, and the medics were still there. And the sheriff's deputies, they all, police and sheriff's department personnel, all have to be about photographs and writing the account of what happened and all that kind of stuff. And the medics don't want to leave until they have some support there. So once I arrived, then everybody there was able to leave. And so I'm sitting there with this elderly woman, and the body is still there until the first ferry, which is about 5:30 in the morning, coming from Seattle, and the medical examiner will be coming to retrieve the body. So here's her husband of 65 years lying on the sofa in their living room covered with a sheet. And she's alone, except with me. So I saw a bottle of wine, and I said, "Can I pour you a glass of wine?" And she said, "Sure." So the two of us sat in her kitchen in full view of the body, and I poured both of us a glass of wine, and I said, "I want you to tell me all about your husband and tell me about your life with him." And I spent probably 3 hours sitting there with her until the medical examiner arrived and family were able to get there. And probably 6 or 7 months later, I'm at a place called The Rock, which is our island pizza parlor with our community. We're having an outing. And so we're sitting there eating a pizza, and I noticed this couple and this elderly woman sitting at another table, and this woman kept staring at me, and I see if maybe I had some cheese in my beard or something, and finally she came over to the table and she said, "Father, I just want you to know how much it meant to me that you sat there at my kitchen table all those hours and that you encouraged me to talk about my husband. It meant the world to me, and it helped me in a big way." Well, I see that as the Incarnation again. That is me as a Christian being the incarnation of Christ in the midst of someone who is struggling. One of the difficulties that I have with clergy is that oftentimes it's been my experience that clergy are so busy with, well, of course, a lot of them have such big parishes and they're alone and they're overworked and so on. But we can't focus only on our own people. And that doesn't mean that you go out door to door like a Mormon missionary. But it does mean that we have to be approachable out in the community. And I remember once I had a priest visiting from Seattle. This was years and years ago. And we were going off to an event, and so I was in his car. We were sitting on the ferry dock, and the windows were down. It was a hot summer day. We're waiting for the ferry. And a man came up to the open windows, and he leaned down and he said, "Excuse me, but what are you?" And this priest had such contempt in the sound of his voice that it was like, "Who are you to interrupt us? Who are you?" I mean, he didn't say that, but that was the tone of his response. "We're Orthodox priests." And then he looked away. And I thought, great. This is the image that this man has of orthodoxy now. Rather than being engaging and responding in a human way. I actually am the chaplain for an Irish pub in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I was visiting a priest friend in Coeur d'Alene, and he and an evangelical minister friend took me to this Irish pub. And it was big open windows, and there was a little Irish band playing, and we were sitting at the bar and having dinner and a pint. And they were serving my favorite beer. It's called, it's called Irish Death. And it has a skull and crossbones. And they're serving it in a glass with this skull and crossbones. And I really wanted that stein. So I asked the owner if I could buy one of those. And he says, "No, I'll give you one." So he handed me a new one. And then he made a comment about how refreshing we were, as opposed to the Roman Catholic priest that would come in there on occasion. He said, "You guys are really fun." And I have a little badge up here, a little police badge, and he saw my badge and he says, "Is that a police badge?" And I said, "Yes, I'm a police chaplain." And he said, "Well, I'd like to make you the chaplain of the bar." I said, "It works for me." So I am the chaplain of an Irish pub called Kelly's in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. If you're ever there, you can tell them you know the chaplain. But again, I share this with you because the beautiful thing about our orthodoxy is it's not only a sublime, beautiful faith, where our temples are the most beautiful, and our services are the most beautiful, and our vestments are the most beautiful, and our priests are the most handsome. Right? And there we are. Okay. You agree? Yeah, okay. But it is a faith that is, because it is incarnational, the icons and the iconographic images that we have around us are proof of that, the importance of the image of God in this world. But when we start thinking of ourselves as functionaries in a temple rather than Christ in the temple, then we lessen the impact of being living icons of Christ in the midst of the world. But it's not just priests that are supposed to do this. It's every one of you. Every one of us is called to this ministry of presence. And I'm convinced that the mass turning of young people to atheism is not that they're choosing atheism, but rather they're being driven to atheism. There's a huge difference. Last year I was invited to speak at Evergreen State College in Olympia. And Evergreen is the most liberal state college we have, by far. The way they grade, the kind of classes that they have. It's on 380 acres of forest. It's like a futuristic city plucked down in a forest. It's a beautiful place. And the students they have a lot of emphasis on courses in environmental studies and organic gardening and things like that, along with other normal classes that you would find in any university. I hadn't been there in quite a few years. So when I got the invitation, I jumped at it, and when I arrived to the appointed building, I was surprised to see that it was a lecture hall. And I was waiting for the professor and the students to start arriving. And I'm looking at this, and the last time I was there, it was a small classroom, and I had 14 students. And so I thought, oh, this is going to be horrible if we're in a classroom that seats 60. It's a lecture hall, a tiered lecture hall that seats 60, and we only have 14 people. I thought, this isn't going to work. And so just as I was thinking about this, the professor arrives, and I said, why are we meeting in this lecture hall for just a class? And he said, oh no, this is campus-wide. We've got posters up. And my first thought was, uh-oh, this is not good, because they didn't tell me ahead of time. And why would they think that they could fill a lecture hall on a campus like this? And then 2 other professors arrived, and the 3 of them were sitting in the upper back on the left, conversing and kind of laughing, and I'm thinking, I know that body language. I used to see it when I taught. They think they've invited me not because they're interested in what I have to say, but rather they're going to use me as an example of how bogus religion is, and how backward orthodoxy is, and monasticism, and probably all religion. I'm sort of the specimen in a scientific study. And so I sit down behind the podium so I don't have to look at everybody for a few moments before it was going to start. And I prayed, help. I don't want to look like a fool. And so when I stood up, there were way over 60 people, because they were standing room only. And the first thing that came to my mind after I had prayed for the Holy Spirit surprised me. Usually I have a question and answer period after a lecture, but instead I announced that this time I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to have the question and answers at the beginning, and we'll see where you want to go, rather than what I want to lecture about, what you're interested in. Well, wouldn't you know it, the first young man who raised his hand said, my question is, why would I be interested in anything you have to say? I'm an atheist. And I thought, oh, Lord. But in my desire to reach out to young people, I was prepared for that because about a year earlier, I happened upon a debate between a deist and an atheist that took place at Portland State University in Portland, Oregon. And it was on YouTube, and the deist was an evangelical Christian young man who sat there with his PC open and really looking, like this educated person who's going to bring this atheist to his knees. And as I looked at that, I was a high school and college debater, and my senior year in high school, my debate partner and I won the state championship in Idaho. So I know a lot about debate. And when I was teaching high school in Berkeley, I also taught the debate team. And so I know that you don't have to be right to win a debate. You have to be good. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at this thing on this YouTube video, and the atheist is winning. I mean, he's good, wrong, but good, and he's winning. And I wanted, in the worst way, to rush forward and push this young evangelical out of the way, and take over the defense of theism and deism. And so I thought, I know this is going to come up in one of the lectures, because I lecture all over the Puget Sound region in colleges and universities. And so I thought I had better darn well be prepared for this moment. And so I started Googling, and I discovered a debate between 3 deists and 3 atheists at Cambridge University in England. And so this was in one of those huge British lecture halls, beautiful interior. And the young man looked like a graduate student who was presiding over the debate, was sitting in a chair not unlike this one. And so he's sitting there, and he announces at the beginning that you are the ones who are going to decide who wins the debate. And it will be decided by which door you go out. So if you go out the left-hand door, the deists win. If you go out the right-hand door, the atheists win. If you go out the middle door, it's a toss-up. You don't know. And one of the debaters for the theists was Rowan Williams, who at the time the retired Archbishop of Canterbury. And when I saw that it was him, I was actually excited, because Rowan Williams openly has been very influenced by orthodoxy. And so I thought, well, he's the next best thing. He's going to debate the truth of the existence of God from at least from some influence of orthodoxy. On the atheist side was the infamous, pompous Dawkins, who is like, well, the poor man. Very angry and very condescending. So as the debate is going on, Rowan Williams says in an eloquent way that religion, Christianity, which this is where the orthodoxy comes in, that the spirituality is a noetic science of the heart, and it's based on the intuitive nature that we have. And he said, so as an intuitive science, we first encounter the truth, And then afterwards we come to believe it to be true. And we find that we absolutely accept this as true. Dawkins disagreed. Dawkins just tore into him. How absurd is that?